Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me. And let's talk about Euripides' Bakkhai, translated by Carson, through the feminist perspective. Euripides was a playwright of the 5th century BC who reinvented the Greek tragedy, setting it on a path that leads straight to reality TV. His plays broke all the rules, upended convention, and outraged conservative critics. The Bakkhai is his most subversive play, telling the story of a man who cannot admit that he would rather live in the skin of a woman and a god who seems to combine all sexualities into a single ruinous demand for adoration. Dionysus is the god of intoxication. Once you fall under his influence, there's no telling where you will end up. This is going to be an exploration into the power relationships between men and women and characters assuming male and female roles. Through the feminist perspective, Dionysus' experiences of being denied godhood can be viewed as a metaphor for someone being denied womanhood due to the patriarchy inherent in ancient Greek as well as modern-day society. So I'm going to be looking at the relationships between Dionysus, who is the god of this play, the Maenads, who are the female followers of Dionysus, and Pentheus, who is the king of Thebes. And this inherent feminism does not mean in any way that Dionysus' actions in the latter half of this play are cool and chill and fine, because they're not. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to start by talking about the collective character of the Maenads, the female followers of Dionysus, because I think it provides good background information on what this feminist Dionysus is like and what his cult is all about. When Dionysus comes to Thebes, he acts as a sort of liberator for its female citizens. Historically, his cult appealed heavily to minority groups, women especially, and he provides them a place to feel free and express themselves far away from the patriarchy of their society. Where the mob of women waits, they've forsaken their shuttles, they've left their looms, they've dropped their aprons, and taken up their stations on Dionysus' mountain. He has strung them out of their minds. So working and making clothes is a traditionally feminine activity, but Dionysus is helping these women break free of what is expected of them, or giving them the confidence to do so, to, go crazy on a mountain. Dionysus is also heavily associated with nature, and throughout the play, nature is used to describe the freeness that the Maenads experience while worshipping him. The Maenads are frequently compared to deer, lions, bulls, packs of dogs, animals that are able to escape from hunters' men in their rapture. This metaphor works because, well, the Maenads are literally in nature. They're on a mountain surrounded by wild animals. But the Maenads' ecstasy mirrors the inherent wildness and unpredictability of nature, which is a theme common in Greek mythology. And the Maenads are also able to control this wildness. Young women, old ones, girls unwed, they shook out their hair and fastened their fawnskins with snakes that slid up to lick their cheeks. Some, new mothers who'd left their babies at home, cradled wolf cubs or deer in their arms and suckled them. Others were wreathing their heads with ivy and oak and bryony. The connotations of being in control and being one with nature, for example, literally breastfeeding wolves and deer, gives power to these women that they've likely never experienced before given this place of freedom, because, ancient Greece was extremely misogynistic. I also just love the idea of powerful, magical women living in the forest and making friends with animals. It's a very specific and satisfying power that's given to femininity. And with that background information, let's move on to our main man, Dionysus. So the play opens with Dionysus proclaiming his godhood. Here I am, Dionysus. I'm the son of Zeus, born by a lightning bolt out of Semele. You know the story. The night Zeus split her open with fire. So, straight out of the gate, Dionysus is challenging gender roles. If you don't know his birth story, Zeus kills Semele, his mother, with lightning, and a fetus Dionysus is sewn into Zeus's thigh until he can give birth to him. This story is interesting because it can be viewed as a challenging of gender roles, putting a man in place of a woman, or it can be viewed as just a way for the Greeks to continue the patriarchy by giving the power that women have to create life to a man. But for some reason, the people of Thebes don't believe that Dionysus is a god, and they go around saying, Dionysus wasn't born of Zeus, Cadmus just made that up after Semele slept with a perfectly ordinary person. And Dionysus' solution to Thebes rejecting his identity is to drive my Bacchic women from the mountains, I shall lead them as an army into battle. Surround Pentheus' house with noise, and let the city see you. I'll go to Mount Kithaeron and get them dancing there. This battle would be a protest against Thebes, who has constantly denied Dionysus his identity and been extremely patriarchal. I love the image of the Maenad surrounding Pentheus' house because it brings up ideas of feminist rallies, protests, and parades, and yelling so that your voice can be heard. Now, all these protests and defying gender roles are great and all, but there are certainly people who would not take kindly to this, which is where Pentheus comes in. Pentheus says, "But people are talking about a certain Lydian stranger hanging around too, a sort of magician, huckster, swoony type, long hair, bedroom eyes, cheeks like wine. He mingles with the young girls night and day, claiming to show them some sort of mystic thing." As soon as Pentheus hears about Dionysus coming to town, he immediately puts him in the role of a seductress, a role that is purely manipulative and evil, and a role that is meant to be deliberately sexually attractive. The diction here heavily implies that all of the women that Dionysus is attracting are all sexually involved with him, which of course is not the case, but it has a lot of very negative resonances with how women's appearances and actions are viewed by men as intentionally entrapping or deceitful, as opposed to just being how they look and act. I think it's important to note that although Pentheus views Dionysus as a man and is constantly forcing traditional gender roles upon him and his followers, Dionysus' expression of gender is very fluid. He has the ability to appear however he wants, and he uses that power to its fullest potential. For example, Pentheus scrutinizes him for having long hair. He says, "First thing would be a crew cut," and Dionysus responds, "But my hair is holy, I grew it for the god." Dionysus is also described as being girl-faced and wearing the costume of a Maenad. Pentheus shuns Dionysus' lack of manliness, which shows his insecurity at his own masculinity, causing him to project that insecurity onto others. This insecurity comes out more when Pentheus says, "Worship? Good idea. I'll worship a big bloody pile of Bacchic women." This is obviously sarcasm, but in context it's incredibly defensive. Pentheus doesn't want to be seen as worshipping anything that could be considered feminine, which is possibly why he rejects Dionysus' godhood in the first place, considering that he's constantly going against gender roles and defying Pentheus' role as patriarch. Pentheus eventually decides that he wants to go and spy on the Maenads, but Dionysus says that he has to dress as one in order to blend in, but Pentheus says, "No, I can't do it, dress as a woman, no." Dionysus plants a divine madness in Pentheus' head, which causes him to agree to wear the costume of a Maenad. And Dionysus does not try to talk around or deny that he is manipulating Pentheus, probably because he's so done with him denying his identity. Up until this point, Dionysus has been very respectful and given Pentheus many chances to redeem himself, but he says, "It's time to punish Pentheus. First, craze his brain, send a scamper of madness into it, otherwise he'll never put on women's clothes. And, given the way he threatened me, I'd like to see him made a mock of, paraded through the town in all his ridiculous female finery." Dionysus specifically uses Pentheus' masculinity against him, citing his pride at his prowess in battle, and being forthright and general manliness. And then he sends him on a stealth mission dressed as a woman. And this is the most significant scene, I think, in the entire play, because Pentheus puts on his Maenad costume and he says, "You know, I seem to see two suns, and a double Thebes, each with all its 7 gates, and you look like a bull leading me in procession. You've got horns coming out of your head. Well, perhaps you were an animal all this time. You're certainly a bull at the moment." Dionysus speaks, and Pentheus responds, "How do I look? Is this the way Ino stands, or Agave, my mother?" Pentheus has been in control from the start of the play, but as soon as he's dressed as a woman, that power dynamic switches and Dionysus is in complete control. Pentheus is having some sort of spiritual experience, and as much as I hate him and his misogyny, I can't help but feel utter sadness for him in this moment, because his hallucinations could be seen as a side effect of the godly madness that's been planted in his mind. Or it could be seen as some sort of euphoria that Pentheus had no idea would ever happen to him, and yet Dionysus is using that euphoria and exploration of femininity that Pentheus has never had because of his prejudices against him. Pentheus, of course, is discovered as he is spying on the Maenads, and is horribly torn apart by them at Dionysus' order. A lot of Greek myths deal with negation of identity that would be described as dishonoring, which in the modern day we don't really have a lot of emotional connection to. But viewing Dionysus' anger as the result of being constantly denied an existence and power in society holds a lot more emotional heft when applying modern-day feminist ideas. The way that Pentheus constantly rejects Dionysus' identity, and the amount of chances that Dionysus gives to Pentheus to redeem himself, I think mirrors the way that a lot of women are denied womanhood or girlhood due to the patriarchy in society. In all, I view Bakkhai as an exploration of the power that can be given to femininity and the subversion of gender roles and expectations, and how that rebellion is received by those whose job it is to persist those gender roles.